Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Your Everyday Strength podcast. My name is Josh Stenberg. And if you're just joining us here for the very, very first time, thank you very much for being here. If, however, you are returning, thank you. This is episode 18. And much like a lot of the other solo episodes, this is more or less a little bit more personal, a little bit more introspective, a lot of just relevance to my life, either within that moment or things that have occurred or anything along those lines, really. And today's episode topic is actually on anxiety. Now, people's perception of anxiety can be very, very interesting. Anxiety is a pretty natural response from our body, and you can more or less feel it in roughly one of two ways. It can be either occasional anxiety, which is a completely normal human response, or people can actually live with chronic anxiety. And the two are incredibly different. Very, very similar in symptoms, very similar in terms of the body's natural responses, but vastly different in terms of their impact on an individual. It can present so differently in person to person based upon their previous history, based upon their environment that they're in at the moment, based upon whatever's going on in their life at that point in time. Like, the way anxiety can show up is so fucking different for so many different people that it can be really, really hard sometimes to actually articulate like the difference between like just feeling a little bit anxious and like a full-blown fucking anxiety attack. Now, myself personally, I've dealt with anxiety, depression, and everything like that, obviously, over the journey. And I've had waves up and down over the years of anxiety coming and going in various different forms. Everything from, just normal situational anxiety through just the most gut-wrenching chronic anxiety I could possibly think of. I used to say I was really socially anxious, and I think it more came down to almost an insecurity being projected outwards. I would have to wear headphones to the shops and all of this other shit, which I've spoken on previously. And I worked out that once I'd worked through a fair bit more of the personal development style of stuff that I've been doing, and on the journey that I have been on, all of a sudden I wasn't really socially anxious anymore. I didn't really care about being in crowds or around other people or anything like that. And that's not to say that I don't get anxious when around crowds, but it's just to say that it doesn't necessarily affect me as much as it used to. Now, anxiety from both like a biological and a psychological sense is essentially it's fight, flight, or freeze. Now, for the most part, most people will understand what fight, flight, or freeze means. It essentially is a body's response to a situation that it doesn't feel comfortable in, it doesn't feel safe in. It is both a survival mechanism and, honestly, in fucking some cases, a completely limiting factor to how people live day to day. Fight, flight, or freeze is essentially designed to respond to a situation that deserves it. Now, back in the day when we were fucking cavemen and Neanderthals and all of that, it was probably more around something like fucking tiger or a saber-tooth attack or some shit like that, where we actually had to fucking fight for our life. Now, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, people get fucking anxious calling the doctor. You're like, I got to book in with the doctor? No, I'm not going to do that. I got to go talk to this person? Nah, not today. All of these different things. And it's not to say that the anxiety you feel is not valid. And it's not downplaying how bad anxiety can actually be for individuals, but it's just sort of painting a picture that back in the day, it was probably fucking very, very different. And in a world nowadays where everything's at our fingertips, from information to constant stimulus, day in, day out on our phones, Instagram, TikTok, etc. It's any wonder that people are probably a little bit more anxious. The world's busier, people's brains are busier, and what I have found, and again, this is more of personally, I have found that I am most anxious when there's a lot going through my brain that I can't necessarily sift through. I have found for me that if I am unable to get out of my own head, that's when I become more anxious. And I know we've all felt anxiety to some degree. As I said, there's varying levels of anxiety that you can feel. We've all felt it to some degree. I mean, some of the most common symptoms are anything from elevated heart rate, sweaty palms, muscle tension, shortness of breath. You can feel sick in the stomach, fucking racing thoughts, overthinking, anything like that, irritability. Like it can stem down to feelings of impending doom. Like there's so many different ways that you can feel it. And as I mentioned at the start, it's something that can come and go in various waves. Now, myself personally, and the reason why I actually wanted to do this episode is because recently I've been dealing with anxiety quite a bit more. And previously, like if I'd dealt with anxiety in the past, I would just say, oh, I'm anxious, or I'm this, or I'm that, and not really ever like want to dive into why or really understand, okay, well, I'm anxious, but what is triggering it? I'm anxious, but how can I help myself not be anxious? Previously, I would have just probably spiraled. And I can think back to a time a few years back now, it was probably 3 years ago or so. And my anxiety was at the absolute fucking worst it had ever been. Now, this was before I was fully diagnosed and medicated for ADHD. So I didn't necessarily have many tools in place to actually be able to help facilitate working through anxiety or any sort of these symptoms or anything like that. And my anxiety reached such a peak that I would wake up, eat breakfast, throw up, have lunch, throw up, think about eating dinner, throw up. I'd go to the gym to train or just to go to work. I'd go to the toilet and throw up straight away. I was having anxiety attacks almost every single day for weeks on end. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. I thought I was doing all the right things. I was trying to do everything I possibly could. At that point in my life, one of the only things that really helped, which I'll get through in a moment, was utilizing CBD oil. But for me, it was like, it was so hard because it was my mind essentially attacking my own mind. And for anybody who has dealt with it in any capacity, you will understand that like you might sit there and have these thoughts and you can logically and realistically go, that's not how I feel, or that's a silly thing to think, or that's this, or that's that. But at that point in time, it's like one of the worst things you could fucking think. It's constant running thoughts that you cannot stop, and they can go to some pretty fucking shitty places. They can create scenarios in your head that aren't real. And your mind has this weird way of like making you think they are. And that in itself causes more anxiety. And then you kind of just end up on this weird spiral of, well, now I'm this, I'm anxious, I'm X, I'm Y, I'm whatever the case might be, I'm whatever my anxious thoughts are telling me is that's what I now am. And at that point in my life, when I was dealing with the constant anxiety and I was dealing with all of it, I was trying to do things that helped myself, but I just couldn't escape it. And it wasn't until I started utilizing the CBD oil that really helped to clean that up. It got to the point where I had to go to the doctor and get the script for the fucking wafers that stopped me throwing up so that I could actually stomach food again. And I kind of rode the wave and got through it. And then I went back to the psych and so on and so forth when I got diagnosed with ADHD. And funnily enough, my brain runs constantly, which is wild, right? But then since then, I'd really learned some pretty fucking cool ways of how to deal with it. I think I'd come to terms a hell of a lot better with learning my triggers, my symptoms, signs when I was sort of getting a little bit too far gone, and how to pull myself back. And I hadn't really experienced much more than probably like a base level of anxiety for quite some time, up until recently. And there's been like a couple of personal events and things like that that have really triggered my brain. And I started to find myself spiraling again. There's been two separate occasions where I have gone to the gym to train, and the gym is like my safe space. Like the gym is somewhere I can go every day of the week, and I feel fucking confident as all hell. I am more confident in the gym than I am in any other location. That is my place. That is my fucking zone. That is where I am me and my most. And two separate occasions over the last probably month, I've gone to the gym and had fucking anxiety attacks so bad that I had to physically leave in the middle of a workout and go home. Now, a lot of people might hear that or think and go, oh, I get anxiety when I go to the gym. And I completely empathize. I completely sympathize. I see you and I understand what it feels like. I know how fucking shitty it is to walk into a gym and have these thoughts running through your head, because I've been training for 11 years. It is basically every single thing I do with my life. I'm so fucking confident in the gym and I still experience it. I still get the feelings of anxiety when I enter gyms. More often than not, it's gyms that I haven't necessarily trained at often or at all. It's new spaces, new zones, new faces, people, where new equipment, new this, new that. Like it's just a whole range of new environmental things, right? And if we think about back to what I was talking about before, about how previously in the Neanderthal days, it was to protect you from a fucking saber-toothed tiger attack. And nowadays it's to protect you, but your brain perceives new as scary, and scary equals anxious, and anxious equals, well, now we need to go into fight or flight because I don't know how we're feeling. And then it kind of cascades. And if you combine that with things like pre-workout or caffeine or fucking any other stimulants, it's like a recipe for just disaster. And it can really fucking spiral. So as I mentioned, like I've gotten a hell of a lot better at actually being able to process it. And for me, it's come down to a few different things. Now, one of the biggest things is noticing, like bringing awareness to it without allowing yourself to fall into it. So coming and bringing yourself back into your body and saying, I'm experiencing anxiety, instead of I am anxious. Because as soon as we say anything along the lines of like I am, or I'm, or I, or this, or whatever the case might be, it's like you are now turning yourself into that thing. It's like you are not anxious. You are experiencing anxiety, which is a natural human emotion. A very, very minor adjustment in relation to how you phrase it, but it can have a pretty massive difference in your brain. Instead of your brain going, oh, I am anxious. Well, if I am anxious, then I have to be doing this and I have to be responding in this way. Instead of saying, I am experiencing anxiety, or something along the lines of like, I'm experiencing anxiety, but I know it will get better, or but I can do something about it. And for me, one of the best techniques, and I come back to this with pretty much any time I mention any form of like self-help technique or anything along those lines, is just journaling, is brain dumping, voice notes, just fucking the notes app on iPhones now. You can literally just talk to text and just talk everything out of your brain. Preferably I like to write everything out, and just whatever comes out of my mind is just whatever I write on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to have any structure to it. It can just quite literally be dot points if you want. It can just be every single word that you're thinking, feeling, etc. And that in itself can make a massive difference, because now all of a sudden you've taken it out of your brain where it's just racing, and you've just gone and put it on paper. And now you can physically look at that thing. It's now out of your mind with no structure, no consistency, no anything. And now it's on a piece of paper that you can control. You have that piece of paper. You can rip that piece of paper up. You never have to look at it again if you want. Or you can sit and go, okay, well, this situation has presented itself. I have come into feeling anxious. What about this situation has caused me to feel anxious? Was I going to have to public speak? Was I going to have to talk to someone and ask a question that I didn't necessarily want to ask? Was it just any other form of like situation or something like that that comes from a place of like, well, now you can actually put a little bit of a label on it and you can start to understand your triggers a little bit better, which means in the future, if you go into a very similar situation, you can go, oh, I'm feeling a little bit anxious, or I'm experiencing anxiety right now due to the fact that I'm about to go and do this. Well, the last time I went and did this, I also felt a little bit of anxiety. However, I still managed to do it. And I got through it pretty okay. I got through it pretty safely because our mind would just love to fucking catastrophize everything. It's like if you really sit there and think like, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's like, what's the worst thing that happens if I walk up and ask this person at the gym, are you using this piece of equipment? It's either going to be, yeah, I am. Would you like to jump in? Or maybe you can ask them if you want to jump in. Or no, I am not, or I am nearly done. It's not too many other things that are really going to occur through that situation, but our brain just has this weird way of catastrophizing everything. Some other methods that I have found really, really help with processing anxiety and when I'm feeling anxious are grounding techniques. So you can look for the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, which is essentially you want to, and I'm going to probably fuck this up because I'm going to have to do it off the top of my head, but it's like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can something, and then like 1 thing you can touch or something along those lines. I probably should have actually looked at that up properly before I spoke on it. But as I said, this is like a little bit more introspective. I'm not an expert on anxiety. I'm not a fucking psychologist. I'm not any of those things. This is more or less my personal thing. Now, for me, I find that or a technique similar to that works really well for me of a morning when I'm going on my morning walks. I'll just walk along of a morning first thing, and if I'm feeling a little bit anxious or my mind's a little bit racy or I've woken up a little bit stressed or whatever the case might be, I'll just walk along. Sometimes I straight up close my eyes as I'm walking and I'll just say, okay, what are 5 things I can hear right now? Or what are 4 things I can hear right now? What are 5 things I can see? And I'll start to list them off. And then all of a sudden, I've taken myself out of my own mind and I put myself in the present. Having Kyle on last week, he mentioned that, we have upwards of like 80,000 thoughts a day. It's only when we start to identify and sit with those thoughts that they become a problem. It's only when we think on a thought that it becomes an issue. It's only when we continue to catastrophize that thought that it becomes a real relentless, like fucking problem for the future. By us now bringing ourselves back to the present moment and not necessarily focusing on the future or the past or whatever the case might be, we're actually able to better just sit with and understand it a little bit better. Another method that works really, really well with all of those like journaling and grounding techniques is just breathe, like breath work, breathing. Slowing our breath rate down, which is going to then allow us to decrease our heart rate, which is going to calm our body down. It's going to put us into more of a rest and digest. We're going to be activating a different part of our nervous system, and we're going to be able to better process and work through whatever we're dealing with. Myself personally, I would probably more look to do it in almost a reverse order. So I would go something along the lines of breath work. Then I would go either grounding to bring presence to the body and then do journaling, or it really doesn't matter how you would do it. For me, I was experiencing what I would guess would be a borderline anxiety attack a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of things that sort of like hit all at once. And to help get myself out of it, I would just spiral and I would just fucking sit in it. And this time I was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to make ourselves feel better. So I went, laid down, did some breath work, calmed my brain down a little bit, just brain dumped exactly what was on my mind at that point in time. I then went and trained and moved my body, releasing a little bit of that anxious energy. If I had tried to just go straight to the gym, loaded up on pre-workout, I'm already anxious, I'm already a little bit jittery, I'm already a little bit on edge, and then all of a sudden I'm going into an environment that's, loud music and people are around and all this, that, and the other, and now my heart rate's up and it's already been up and now all this other shit is going on. Probably a good fucking way to just spiral and have a full-blown anxiety attack. So it's about understanding your triggers. It's about understanding the way in which you like to process it a little bit better. And as I mentioned at the very start, it's like everybody's experience of it is different. Like, this may not work for you, some of this stuff. Some of it might. It all might. None of it might. If none of it works, well, I call a psychologist straight away. If none of that works in any way, shape, or form to help you calm down your anxiety, go to a doctor, go to a psychologist straight away, because you need to learn some better techniques on how to be able to do that. Because slowing our breath down, there is so much research, so many studies, so much backing to show that it actually does help us with relation to reduction of anxiety and reducing heart rate and putting us into our parasympathetic nervous system and rest and digest and all of this sort of stuff. So it's calming ourselves down. Now, as I was just sort of talking about, there are a few things to kind of consider. And there are a few things that can actually exacerbate it. Now, one thing is social media. Social media is like fucking content consumption. If you're already anxious, it's probably not a good idea to sit there on your phone scrolling through TikToks that are just bang, 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 bang in your face, or sitting on your Instagram looking at what everyone else is doing, or comparing yourself to everyone else, or what's this person doing or what's that person doing, and like spiraling even further because you're not really working through it. Although you're sitting there going, well, I'm going to distract my mind from how it's feeling. You're not proactively actually doing anything to help reduce it. You're just kind of trying to put a little bit of a band-aid or a mask over it for now, and then it's going to come back up a little bit later. Or worst case, it's going to come up very, very fucking soon in a way that you don't want it to. Your environment's role. So going to a really busy place, if you're already fucking crazy anxious right now and you're experiencing anxiety and you decide to go and take yourself to like the busiest place that you can think of, and then now all of a sudden it's chaos all around you, again, probably not the best place. Myself personally, if I'm experiencing like quite severe anxiety, the first place I take myself to is the beach. It's like the most calm place I can possibly think of. When I am spiraling hard, the first thing I do is go swim in the ocean. It's almost like a complete mental reset, because whether it's cold, whether it's warm, whatever the case might be, like there's something so therapeutic about going and dunking in the ocean. You could kind of float in there for a second, giving yourself time to calm down a little bit, fresh air, hopefully sunshine. And then it's just going to allow you to calm down just that little bit more. Finding a calm space or finding a place that you consider to be safe is probably one of the biggest things that can help. Your daily lifestyle factors are definitely going to play a role. Like if you're undersleeping, if you're under eating, if you're over caffeinating, if you're doing all of these things, if you're not drinking enough water, then there's probably a higher likelihood that you're going to either A, experience anxiety, or the severity of the anxiety that you do experience is going to be worsened. I have to be very mindful on days when I am feeling quite anxious to not overstimulate, because that causes me to spiral faster than anything else will. Now, I already in a day take quite a lot of stimulants, and I just know I'm like, okay, cool. I'm feeling a little bit more anxious today. Obviously, I'm going to want to work through this, but for now, there's ways I can help myself. And one way I can help myself is by not fucking over caffeinating or overstimulating or whatever the case might be, because not only could that affect how I'm feeling in the acute phase by increasing your heart rate or increasing blood pressure or increasing your thought processes or anything, but if it then carries through and affects your sleep at night, it's going to affect you chronically too, because now all of a sudden your sleep at night is fucked. if you're not sleeping, if you're not getting deep sleep, if you're not getting REM sleep, then all of a sudden you're going to wake up the next day and you're feeling worse. And then it's just this repetitive cycle of, well, I feel X now and it's dragged on for 5 days instead of only being around for like half a day, because you've decided to just go and caffeinate the fuck out of it, not drink water, eat like shit, and now you're just stressed as all fuck in every other capacity that you can possibly be. It's any wonder you feel like shit. It's any fucking wonder you feel anxious. It's any wonder you don't feel great. You need to look after your brain. You need to look after your mind. You need to look after your body. And you need to be the one to do that. Now, something else that is probably pretty important, and this again depends on the severity of what you're experiencing and the severity of the anxiety that you do deal with, or whatever the case might be. And that is, you can't constantly avoid everything forever. So if you have a tendency to be more socially anxious in crowds and things like that, you can't avoid crowds forever, because the more you avoid them, the worse it's going to get. The worse it gets, the more you freak out anytime you go near a crowd. The more you freak out anytime you go near a crowd, then all of a sudden it's gone from a crowd to a group of 10, then it's gone from a group of 10 to a group of 4, and now all of a sudden you can't leave the house because you're so scared to leave because there's people out there. It's like you can't avoid people forever. You can't avoid certain situations forever. It's not to say you need to go out straight away and just fucking throw yourself in a mosh pit and have at it, but allowing yourself the time, the space, the compassion and the grace to be able to work through it and go, okay, cool. Well, I get a bit anxious at the gym, but if I go in with a plan of attack and I know exactly where the equipment is and I'm going to see a friend there, then maybe now the anxiety's gone a little bit more. Or if you have a PT and you walk in there and you go, okay, cool, I'm going to walk straight to my PT, I'm going to work with them, and now I'm not as anxious because now I know what I'm doing. I don't need to worry about anything else. I'm just there to do what I need to do and then get out of there. All of these different things are going to have a pretty massive effect on actually being able to assist you with it. With relation to continually working through it, a few key things are going to come around pretty much exactly what I've already said. Now, we can look at it from, meditation or mindfulness practices. So grounding, practicing presence, practicing, mindfulness, being a little bit more present in the current moment, meditation, breath work, etc. Establishing a more regular movement / exercise routine, as I mentioned. Training, removing the anxious energy from the body, expelling it, releasing the fucking feel-good endorphins, getting a pump, feeling strong, feeling good about yourself. That's a pretty good way to remove anxiety, because now you're building confidence and establishing habits and building discipline. Motivation's up because you're feeling good. And that's not to say it's going to work for everybody in that exact same scenario, but it will work for a majority of people. You can break tasks into smaller, bite-sized pieces. So rather than feeling incredibly overwhelmed by having this huge task at hand, you can sit there and break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces. It's like, well, this is the massive task. I'm going to break it down into 5 parts. All of a sudden, those 5 parts aren't so scary. You tick off one, then you tick off the next, then you tick off the next, and then all of a sudden, it's done. And instead of you avoiding it, you've now been able to achieve what you wanted to achieve, or ticked off the goal that you needed to do, or gone through the work that you needed to do. And hey presto, now you're not anxious anymore because you're actively getting through it. Having a support network is incredibly helpful. I already mentioned that going to a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, anything like that, working with them is going to be really helpful through this. Having friends that you're able to talk to when you are feeling a little bit more anxious, or you're just struggling a little bit, or a coach or something along those lines. Myself personally, I'm very fortunate. I do have a great support network, and there are people that I can turn around to and say, hey, I'm actually feeling a bit anxious at the moment. Can we just chat? Maybe I just need to get some things off my brain. Like, I don't need you to give me answers to any of it. I just maybe need to say it out loud so that it's like gone out of my mind, and this is a way that I can help work through it. Or do you want to go and grab a coffee? Or do you want to, let's go do something that's going to get us out, and we're going to go do something different that's going to break up the routine to be able to help move through this situation. Now, I mentioned it before about the way we frame it. And instead of saying I am anxious, saying I am experiencing anxiety, which are two vastly different things, it's taking it away from it being about you. Like, it is not you. It is just something you are experiencing. If you are sad, you don't say I am sad. You can say I am experiencing sadness, or I am experiencing a down moment, or something like that. And now all of a sudden you're not articulating it as you are the thing. It is just you are something, and you are experiencing a completely normal human emotion. Makes sense, right? If we can just change it a little bit, instead of, why is this happening to me, and think, what is this trying to teach me? If instead of thinking, what if this goes wrong, thinking, what if it works out? What is the worst case scenario? What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario if I go up and ask this person to work in? They might just say no. No. Fuck, they might tell you to fuck off. Okay. It's the best case scenario. You might make a new best friend. You've just overcome something that you thought was so scary, and that person might be the nicest person in the world, or they might be experiencing anxiety too, and you coming up and having a bit of a chat to them can actually really fucking help them. And now all of a sudden, you got a new friend. You guys can be gym buddies or gym bros or whatever the case might be, and fucking happy endings or for all or something. It doesn't quite work like that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if life's a Disney movie. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. Could be a Disney movie. Mine would be, I don't know. I like Tarzan, but I don't know if I'd like to live the life of Tarzan. I mentioned it before. Supplements that may help. Now, CBD oil for me was a massive, massive one that I've only really had to use once throughout my life, when it was just so severe. I physically could not work through it, and it helped to downregulate my nervous system to a point where I could then actively work through it through other practices. I'm able to keep it pretty well managed nowadays, and I predominantly will utilize magnesium. Glycinate would be the first one. Threonate can be really good for calming effects as well. Glycinate I like to use because it helps relax the muscles. If we're able to relax our muscles, we're able to, not be so tense, and we can breathe and focus. L-theanine is probably one of my biggest recommendations for people on a daily basis. I love L-theanine. It's had a massive increase in being utilized with pre-workouts, with even the Oxy Shreds. They've got L-theanine in them as well. And it just helps you to it just calms the nervous system down a little bit. And I have genuinely noticed a huge difference when I do use L-theanine daily, with sleep, with stress, with anxiety, with all of that, versus not using it at all. It also doesn't sedate you, which is a really good thing. So it relaxes you without sedating you, which, if you're trying to get through day-to-day life, it's probably a really fucking good thing. Now, omega-3 fatty acids can help with supporting brain health. Ashwagandha, which it can reduce stress levels. Now, ashwagandha is not something that I would personally recommend myself. I've used it on and off a couple of times. I've not necessarily had any positive outcomes with it, but I have heard of other people who have used it and really enjoyed it and liked it. So again, this is something that you could try yourself. It's not something I'm telling you to take, because for me, I did not experience a good response to ashwagandha. But I know a lot of people who have. So do some research yourself and make a decision for yourself on that one. And B vitamins as well, because they can support nervous system function, they can support brain health, they can support a whole bunch of different things as well. As I mentioned at the start, or throughout, I'm not an expert on anxiety. I'm somebody who's dealt with anxiety a large majority of my life in varying waves, severities, and I've learned a few really helpful tips and tricks to actually work through it. The reason I wanted to put this out is because, again, I like to be fairly fucking transparent with people, and it's been something that's been higher up on affecting my life at the moment than I would like to admit. But I was also really proud of myself for the way in which I actually handled it. And as I said, years and years ago, it would have spiraled, and I probably would have been fucking in this anxious tiz for like 3, 4, 5, 6 days, weeks on end potentially. Whereas there's only been a couple of times now where it's really spiked. I've gone and done actively worked on trying to get through it, and it's calmed down within that same day, within the next day. To be completely open and honest, this week my anxiety peaked the worst it's been in a very, very long time. It caused me, I wasn't able to train. I wasn't able to focus. I wasn't able to eat. I couldn't eat. I felt sick every time I stomached something or tried to stomach something. I slept for about 3 hours Monday into Tuesday. And by working through these steps, so the first thing I did was stacked some wins. I was like, I need to train, but I don't want to go and train at a large commercial gym. So I went into Nexus and I trained. Saw some people that I know, had a bit of a laugh. Didn't take the session so seriously, but I was like, if I go in there and I can have a bit of a laugh and a bit of a chat with people, and I can also tick off some goals in the way, I'm going to feel good about myself. I then took myself to the beach and I went for a swim. I then laid on the sand for a bit, just in the sun, fresh air, sunshine. Then came home, journaled, brain dumped, a little bit of breath work, and it was gone. It was as if my mind just stopped racing. I was able to eat. My sleep for the last 2 nights has been fucking outstanding. I feel better, feel more confident, feel like happier again. And all in all, just feel really fucking positive. So if you were listening to this and if anxiety is something that plagues you, if it is something you deal with, it is something that you are worried you are never going to be without, I can promise you, hand on my heart, it will get better. Find methods that work for you. Find ways in which you can deal with it actively. Don't let your thoughts consume you. Find positive ways to deal with it. I can promise you right now that everything will get better. If you need to, please seek professional help. It will increase your quality of life, and you are not your thoughts. As always, if you have listened to this episode and you've enjoyed it, if you've gotten anything out of it, if you want to reach out and ask for some tips or tricks on how to deal with certain things, please feel free. My DMs are always open. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not any of this. I'm just a person who's lived with these things. And I've found ways that have worked for me. They may not necessarily work perfectly for you, but if they do help one person, then I'm fucking stoked that I've been able to help with that and been able to share. As always, if you've taken value from this episode, please feel free to share with a friend, share on social media, like, comment, all the rest. Otherwise, thank you very much for being here, and I'll speak to you again soon.